what
I'm going to kick off the bio for Paul here. We just got to make sure that anyone who's on the StreamYard, make sure you turn your volume down because we're doing both here. So, anyways, we got Paul. Paul is one incredible individual. He has the most interesting website, but he is the world's #1 expert in spreading goodwill and human kindness. I love that for global 500 multi-billion-dollar brands. Many of them you may have heard, such as Apple, Audi, Mercedes, Microsoft, Nissan, United Nations, U.S. State Department, Volvo. I mean, these are incredible brands. Even the city of Aspen, Colorado. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to branding. I like how he says he's curiosity obsessed and he loves for a better world. And that really does come out in all the things that he always gives his advice, which is incredible. So he likes to think things CEOs and CMOs and human beings actually like, which I love and we all need. So I'm going to hand it over now to Paul. Welcome.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending where you are in the world, but
we
good
can't
right
hear
now.
you, Paul. Make
Oh,
sure you unmute your clubhouse when you're talking. Unmute your clubhouse. Yes, so very excited to have Paul today. Everyone, open your mic and let's welcome Paul in a big way. It's going to be a great night.
right, can you not hear me? You can hear me, can't you?
Yes, Paul, can when you talk to Clubhouse, Paul, make sure you unmute your Clubhouse microphone. Are you doing that? Because we cannot hear you. So
Oh,
you
I see
have
you
to
use
make sure you
Clubhouse for that.
yes.
Okay. All right, here we go. Here we
There
go.
you go. We can hear you now. So
All
uh
right. Okay,
there
well, anyway, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good right now, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul, and let me tell you about where you are and why I created this room. It's called Branding into Billions with a B for two reasons. One, depending how young you are, if you're going to be starting a business and running it for a little while longer, everyone in the Western civilization needs to at least be a millionaire. But the point is, if you're ambitious and you've got something you really want to grow, I'm going to show you how to think like a successful $1 billion brand. I've worked with more than a handful, I can tell you. So the other point of why it's called branding into billions is because my expertise is in branding. And what is branding? Well, we'll talk about that, but it isn't the same as marketing and it can be advertising and it isn't necessarily strategy. It's all of those things rolled up into one. So what we're going to do, I'll talk a little bit about my experience, tell you a couple of quick stories, and then we'll go into some fundamentals. I know in this group, people like hearing the 7 basic human stories, but I'm also going to take you through my thought model, which I call the diamond, which is something big businesses, giant businesses, and teeny weeny business can use equally well. Because one of my slogans is large clients and small, equal rights for all. So, any questions before I begin?
yeah, before we go with your diamond branding strategy, what do you call it? I can't wait to hear about it because I'm blown away. Every time you open your mouth, it's just like, man, Paul knows what he's talking about. And I've heard a lot of branding.
Hey, Kate, no one can hear you on Clubhouse.
Oh, yes, I apologize. See, I did what Paul did. This is a fun, like, yeah. So every time Paul opened his mouth, I'm just fascinated. I've heard a lot of branding expert, but I've never heard someone as deep and as poetic and as I don't know, as talented as Paul. And that's the reason why he's here. But Paul, I'm gonna give a little bit context. What was your journey like to get where you are? I know you as the TM guy that plays guitar, but tell us a little bit about Paul.
I just realized I am probably the most obsessively curious human being I've ever met. And it's been like that since the cradle. And it just gets worse and worse and worse, or better and better, depending on your politics. I'm curious about humanity, about nature, about existential issues, about practical, down the earth issues, which is why in this master class, we're going to call it that, any fool can complicate something, but it takes genius, someone else said, to simplify something. I'm to simplify a lot of things for everyone to make it digestible. But what's made me me is simply that curiosity has just led me into rooms, into situations, and through doors a lot of people couldn't imagine. Um, Pitching a peace plan for Afghanistan to the United Nations and to NATO, the Security Council, the United Nations actually, hanging out with the members of Led Zeppelin in their homes, making an entire city fall in love with the used car lot. That curiosity just means that I have access to the wisdom of the ages. Every branding technique that's ever been done, I can call up in a heartbeat, in a flash, and that speed, how I can deliver the accumulated wisdom, is what makes me who I am, I think.
Wow, that's see, even the way how you answer who you are is way different than most people would do. But I love that curiosity piece. Now, Paul, where did you grow up? A little bit of background about yourself. Where did you grow up?
Okay, this is not trying to be smart ass. I mean this. I have never and I never will grow up. I really maintain a childlike innocence to everything I do, but with hopefully some accumulated wisdom. I've never been given a really conclusive, compelling argument for growing up, not in this world. But
And
I was born, apparently, this physical being first popped out in a city called St. Louis, Missouri, which I have returned to temporarily before moving to the Netherlands next year. But I've lived in Aspen, Colorado for a few years too.
see the way how he answered. Then, do you have any? How do you go after that? It's gonna be difficult.
Well, but it's not that funky. It's really practical. Yeah, who I am is living in this physical body. Where I was before this body, I think I know, but let's not go there because I might send some people down a rabbit hole they wouldn't get out of.
All right, Dan, do you have a question for Paul?
Yeah, Paul. So I guess branding, it seems like such a broad term. So I guess, do you have a specific part of branding that you would consider your expertise, or one that we're going to be hearing more about today? Or how do you even define branding?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, this is a clubhouse we're talking on, which is filled with charlatans and idiots and goofballs, and I'm not naming them by name. There's a difference between marketing, branding, and advertising, and I'll explain it with a metaphor. Marketing is a train that's going somewhere. Now, a train on a track going somewhere. Maybe it's going towards TikTok land. Maybe it's going towards Instagram. Maybe it's going towards wherever. But who decided where it's going is strategy. And how fast it goes or how long it can go depends on how much fuel has been put into it. And that is called the budget. What does the train carry? Does it carry scrap, a heap of dead dogs, coal, gold, or diamonds? That is the brand. And that brand has to be carried to wherever it's going. And when it gets there, that experience when it gets there is delivered traditionally through advertising. So my X factor is very quickly knowing where that train should go and what it should be carrying.
Love that. Thank you, Paul. So, what would you then consider a company's brand versus a personal brand? And how do you feel about the term personal brand?
Well, I have heard two or three different explanations for who came up with this, but it wasn't me. It said a brand is what people think about you when you're not there. And I find that very practical. The impression that you give as a person or as a brand through one or multiple experiences forms that molecular model of what a brand is. And for everyone, it's a little different. And I would say it as being molecular because you have certain elements, and some elements might be larger or smaller to you or to me, but that's how we form it. A personal brand is why? Because it's a brand of a person. And the responsibility or the opportunity that a person has to be and to convey and communicate a brand is not inherently different than a business. They're the same thing. They may be operating in different realms and different scales, but the challenges and the fundamentals are essentially the same.
I have a question on that. When does somebody, as I think this comes up a lot, and we do see this with people, we have a friend who is very successful in their business, grew their business brand, but never ever once focused on themselves. Now they're exiting and they have no idea what they're going to do. The thing is, they want to be a speaker, they want to do all this stuff, but nobody has a clue. And unfortunately, nobody cares about them because they never built their personal brand. So, what do you tell people then? Is there one do you build versus the other? Do you build them simultaneously? What are your thoughts here on this?
Well, let's just stay with the example you gave. I don't even need to know the person. The opportunity they have, and if they have really built a business that's well known, it should not take very long for them to be associated with that and go where they want to go. Or, see, what I always tell people, if you want to become famous, it's not difficult if you don't care how you become famous. But the need to become famous takes a decision more than it takes a budget. Anyone who's trying to build a personal brand, why do you want a personal brand? Is it ego, or is it because what you deliver is tied to your physical presence somewhere? Every situation is a little different, but the requirements of fame, growth, scale are universal.
Incredible. Thank you, Paul. Back to you, Kate.
Yes, wow. What an,
Actually, that wasn't incredible. Thank you. It's practical. It's common.
All right,
you
I take it
super,
back.
Common sense. It's
It was
uncommon
it was
sense.
credible, but not incredible.
there
Thank
you
you.
go. Right, Paul, can you tell us how can a brand make that billion-dollar brand? Like, let's talk about companies that you've worked before.
Well, actually, I'll talk about my favorite brand in the world because it's the best example thereof. Nike. Nike. I don't know how many of you out there, if you were in a meeting about what are we going to call the company, would say yes to an esoteric Greek word that meant victory. And if you don't know the story, it's supposedly the battle, marathon, and the runner ran 26 approximate miles, dropped out with one word on his lips, Nike, we won. How many of you would choose an esoteric Greek word? No one will understand it. We're not sure how to pronounce it. Nobody needs something else. See? And the thing that drives Nike's success, and see, part two, we're going to be talking about simplicity, focus, and depth. What has made Nike arguably the most successful brand in the world, and I will fight anyone out on the street right now to defend this. They are the most successful brand ever. Brand. Because in the very beginning, when they were college students trying to come out with a better running shoe, and someone figured out you can make a mold from a waffle iron, and off they went. The apocryphal story is that first poster or ad when they worked with John Brown and partners, well before there was the Wieden Kennedy, but there was a Chiat Day. They just didn't have any of the business then. They had a picture, apparently, of one of them running along a lake at sundown or sunrise. That's just cool. You can't tell which it is unless you know the neighborhood. Running along the lake with 5 words. And these 5 words are the ethos that runs through Nike in the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, the aughts, the teens, and the tweens, and everything they do, from that very first poster ad to the campaign they did this last summer about the new play. Brilliant stuff. 5 words runs through everything, and you can find that even in the slogan, just do it. 5 words from the beginning that ran and drove the silver thread of meaning, the heartbeat, the everything in Nike. 5 words. And what are the 5 words? There is no finish line. There is no finish line. As soon as they planted that flag, every runner, because they were a running shoe company then, isn't it kind of nice? It works for all athletes of any kind. Once you decide to become a runner, a football player, an American tackle ball player, a baseball player, whatever you want to do, you begin a quest of sacrifice, of focus, of denial, of pain, that you never arrive. And every athlete from then to today feels that in what they do and says, they understand my struggle. They understand my desire. And that connection, that deep human, emotional, physical connection they've made with people since the beginning has made them the most successful brand in history to date. And the way you can measure it is look in their history. How many of their commercials, their videos are directly selling a shoe or some kind of equipment? Almost none.
Hmm.
Almost none. But they sell a shit ton of shoes and equipment.
All right, so Paul, for a business angle of that, I love that five words. I've heard that from you. There's no finish line for scalability and prof, in a profit angle. So that means everyone needs to buy because there's no ending. Is that kind of what that means? Like
That is a
everyone
quest
is
model.
okay.
Yeah, of all the so-called human stories, Nike is a perfect example of a direct quest model. A quest is a journey towards something that you never reach. And so they embody that. And like I said, without even naming as a quest, that emotional connection to athletes who see themselves in the brand by saying, you're espousing beliefs and giving me emotional, mental, physical transmissions of that quest. You've connected with me. And when you go in that deep, it's difficult to break that. Not impossible, but it's difficult.
Hmm. Is there any other brand aside from Nike kind of that big of an impact to, is there any other brand that you can compare it to?
Well, not to compare to, but we'll mention Apple because if you look on YouTube, you'll find when Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs, was introducing the Macintosh not to the world but to a smaller meeting. And other times he even talked about Nike as being their aspirational brand. So what did Apple do, and what has Apple done? Over time, they have built an ecosystem, not a stack of features. See, their competition, whether it's Samsung or anyone, they have to put a stack of features saying, oh, well, Apple's got that, but look at this feature. We can fold ours or whatever. That's what they have to do. Apple has built an ecosystem that says what? It's intuitive. Any of you who has an iPhone in your hand, and most of you on Clubhouse probably have an iPhone if you've been on the app since the beginning, or if you're in the creative field, you're probably working with a Mac. Look at it right now. I'm looking at mine. There's nothing on my MacBook Pro that doesn't need to be there. And if you go 15 years ago and look at a PC, there's all kinds of crap in the design that doesn't need to be there. And over time, they've borrowed from Apple and they've simplified. Apple has delivered that experience that says what you want and not what we want. We get out of the way with our technology so you can do what you want to do. And consistency over time in the product, the performance of the product, and the marketing and advertising and branding that delivers that promise of this is going to be graceful, fluid, beautiful, fun, human, and expressive. And we sort of get out of the way, which is why they had the first model of a site and an e-store, almost like YouTube, that had nothing. And everything on it was the jewel, that white space. They've delivered that through consistency over decades.
Hmm. Do you think that Apple will be successful if it's not because of Steve Jobs?
That's kind of a fool's question
No, what mean.
because there wouldn't be an Apple wasn't. But I
Okay,
can
no,
could I
okay.
imagine what would Apple be if it wasn't for Steve Jobs? There would not be an Apple because Woz is an engineer. He needed Steve Jobs. Woz would have made a lot of cool things, but he needed someone who was the visionary and fearless to push it out there. And if Jobs hadn't happened, would someone else have shown up? I don't know. You could say Steve Jobs had a personal brand, and so.
Awesome. That's what I mean by that, because when it comes to his personal brand, people would say X, Y, and Z is too tough, but like, hey, he made it like be different. I mean,
Yeah, but a big difference between Steve Jobs and
it's
some bullshit influencer today with a personal brand. He didn't create a brand and then try to sell it. He was who he was, and the brand formed around him.
love it. Dan, you have a question for Paul?
No, I just like that. I mean, look at that. You get basically removed from your own company, create another company, and then that company wants you to come back so bad. That's a good brand.
Yeah, it's fascinating how someone can have a personal brand, but no matter what it is, if you have a strong product, then it will survive.
Hmm. Right. So branding into billions. Can you brand something without the truth of the brand under it and reach millions? In other words, do you need integrity? Can you wear a mask? I would say in the past, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me, why name a brand of peanut butter?
Well, someone's very obsessed with peanut butter here. So,
Just, I
uh,
want to hear it. Name a brand of peanut butter.
Justin's.
Name another one.
then you need to rephrase it for a live audience
I
as
think
well.
that's what we got.
If anyone's speaking on Clubhouse, I can't hear them. You have to tell me what they're saying.
Jiffy, Skippy, or
Okay, all right. So the point is, unless you get into like non-GMO, organic, peanut butter, most mass-produced peanut butters are essentially all the same, aren't they? So why are one brands more well-known, more successful, more rich, and in the grocery store, the brands who occupy the sweet spot of eye level? Well, in the old days, back in the 80s, 90s, or in other words, like pre-social media, whatever, image advertising worked for parody products, image branding for that matter. You could have a jingle, you could have something catchy that was just top of mind. Was it great advertising? Rarely, rarely. So that's why I didn't work on that crap. But the point is, you can make a successful brand in the past in a parity category. Like cars used to be, automobiles used to have a huge difference between those that were reliable and the ones that broke down all the time. But now almost any brand you buy will last you a long time. And what they really need is image advertising now to really make you want something. And now, I don't know, I want to get off the topic of a really, really annoyingly stupid industry. But back to peanut butter. Back then, you could spend the money and hire some fairly genius advertising branding people to do something that stuck in the public's consciousness, where most people, when they thought it doesn't make a difference which one they buy, and they toss Jif in the cart. But these days, when the so-called truth about a business or a brand can be discovered by going to any number of websites or talking to any number of your friends, you have to have what we're going to talk about in our next one, depth. You have to have depth of the brand, because if people peel off the mask and find something that doesn't match, you're going to be in trouble and you won't make it to a billion. Or if you're a billion, you're going to go down to a million pretty quick.
So I have a there we
We
go. I have
can't.
a question because I had to unmute both there. So my question is this: something that we hear a lot of questions here, right? It's been almost a year. We've heard thousands and thousands of questions on Clubhouse and social, and I think people have a hard time figuring out what their brand is, right? They have a product or a service that they know they want to sell. They know why they want to sell it. They got that. But they don't know how to actually create a brand around that. It's like I have, let's say, a sunscreen. I want to sell this sunscreen, but I don't know, like, how do I actually make a brand around that product? I think that seems to be one of the biggest areas of opportunity that we find, and the questions that come up is they have a product or service, but how do you actually create this brand? Like you said, how do you create that brand like Nike where it surpasses the actual product and service to something much bigger?
Okay, we're in 2021. You don't have to write anymore. You can let Jarvis do it. You don't have to spell check anymore. You can let Google or Grammarly do it. You can use AI to do a lot of things that'll be just good enough. Probably even create a brand. You can get a logo done automatically through AI or hire someone for $5. Does that mean that's what a logo is worth? Is that how good writing should be just because? See, we're in the world right now, because I'm going to bring this right to your point. In the world right now, technology, and there's nothing I can do about it, as much as I would like to, is going to raise the floor of what is minimally acceptable in communications to a level where it's going to squish towards the ceiling of the truly exceptional. Now, for those of you who aren't watching live in the video, what I did, I just raised my arm to the top of my screen to leave like a 5% little space up there. And personally, I'm okay with that because this is always a 99-1 world. I think 99% of all brands and marketing is crap, and 1% is really worth working on. And I'm just trying to make that 1% to 2%, and then I'll die a happy man. So the point is, what you have to do to achieve what you just asked, Daniel, is this. If you've got a business, a personal brand, a product, a service, SaaS, whatever you've got, a consultancy, and you're going to bring it to a marketplace, remember that train's going somewhere. What is it carrying? It takes genius or great luck to land on something that's going to resonate and work. Genius or luck. And sometimes geniuses are really lucky, and sometimes you can be lucky and have a genius idea. But I'll give you a hint. You got to find out what's true about it. Is there anything there that is different or potentially different about it? Is it solving an important problem in some way, shape, or form? And see, today we can say that's the product, that's in the customer service, it's in the way we sell it, it's in the packaging, it's in the founder story, it's in the charity support. You have all these facets that are potentially there. But of all those facets, I'm spreading my fingers out wide on the video. The real trick is to make it feel like one. So it is digestible. In other words, so many people, if I'm working with startups, they'll say, well, we're this and we're this, we've got this and this and this. I said, well, great. No one can digest that. You got to bring them together to fit it in someone's mouth. Or better yet, you could try to pull the thumb or this finger, but maybe you find the one thing that'll pull everything else along with it. It takes genius and nuance to understand the human quality, because we are still humans. Check your watch. It may change by tonight. But we're all humans, and we have to find the human nuance that will be compelling, that will be simple, digestible, and mean something to people. Then you've got a fighting chance of being able to make a brand that not only will work now, but if you believe in it well enough, will sustain you. A quick little story. I was talking to someone who I believe is actually in this room right now, and a small business. And I told her, she said two things that were absolutely powerful. I asked her my question: if you had all the money in the world and only 2 weeks left to live, what would you do? And she said, what I'm doing now. It's like, I was sold. I was in love. And then two, the idea that what you're going to be doing, you believe it is so essential to the world that goes beyond your life. If you have those qualities, you have the potential to have a sustaining, successful, profitable brand.
So, follow-up question to that. And this is credible. It's not incredible, by the way. So my follow-up question is this. Do you tweak and change the brand around the customers that seem to be buying? Because I know we've talked around like who's your ideal customer. People give it different names. Avatar, I think it has like a million names, right? Mm-hmm. Do you find it's better to tweak and change the brand around the people that are buying? Because sometimes we think it's going to be someone it's not, or do you just build your brand and see who's more attracted to it? What are your thoughts there? Because I think this has also come up pretty frequently around people don't really understand who the customer is yet. Maybe it's a startup, or after they create this product and service, they're finding different people than what they thought are actually buying it. Should they then change the brand around that or just keep going? What are your thoughts here?
Remember I said 99 and 1%? So I refuse to lie to you, and I'm not going to bullshit you. It's going to start and end very disappointingly. I'm going to start by saying it depends, and I'm going to end by saying it depends. One thing that I get really turned off about is the preponderance and the emptiness of when people talk about the importance of the customer avatar. I'm sick to death of hearing that. If your business and your brand exists to follow and be reactive and responsive to your target audience, you better make sure that's a successful brand and business model. If that is your business and your job is to simply listen to what people want and give it to them, good luck. I'm not the guy to help you with that, but good luck. There are people who help you with that. Apple and the CEO of Sony. Oh, ever hear of that brand? You know, the thing was shocking to people in the 1980s when they were checking Americans in a survey. I think Gallup did it. Your most trusted brand, people said, Americans said Sony. And that sent shockwaves through American brands because it wasn't an American brand. What Sony CEO and Apple both said, we don't ask people what they want. We invent things and make them want it. You see, that's the problem with data. Even right now at 6:34 p.m. Central Standard Time, an algorithm cannot tell you what's going to happen. Research cannot tell you what people are going to want next week. Oh, they can say the likelihood and based on other patterns. But you realize what happened? And I'm not even going to say what it is, but there have been moments in history and in news that have changed everything. Haven't changed people. Remember, people don't change. We still wonder where we came from. We still wonder why we're here. We still think about sex. We still think about love, and we fear death. But the environment can change with news and happenings that change what we pay attention to and what we feel about it. It depends. It's universal that if you're in business, you need a brand, but the situation that everyone is in are going to be unique. And God bless the fact that they're unique. Otherwise, we'd have a world with only 3 possible brands, and that would be boring. So it depends.
Hey, no, I always love your honest answers. So thank you for that. And I have one more question. I think we're going to Kate. I know we're going to open up here in a minute as well. When it comes to learning about big brands, so if you're a small brand, obviously, this room is mostly what we would consider small business, which I think is like if you look at the government, small businesses under 25 million in revenue or something like that. And I could be wrong, but most people here are most likely in that small business arena. Should they be looking at other small businesses or hiring people that work more with small businesses, or should they be looking at what bigger brands are doing and hiring people that have worked with bigger brands? I think this is something that people have pondered back and forth.
Dan, you have a beautiful knack for asking questions where my honest answer would be it depends. But this time I'm going to lead with it depends and I'll end with something else I don't know. If you're a small business or you think you're a small business, you probably can learn a lot by looking at a billion-dollar brand and try to glean wisdom from it. That's why I'm here today and the next 2 Wednesdays to teach anyone even on a small startup level how to learn from what a billion-dollar brand is. But to grow, to scale, to have a massive positive effect in society and in culture, learn as soon as possible how to seek out and learn from greatness. If you're a small business, you got to find a great other small business that's headed for the sky. You see something in some other startup that you think is a fantastic idea and you can visualize it going somewhere. Study them, as well as study the Nikes, the Apples, the Coca-Colas, the Airbnbs, I guess the Amazons. depresses me how many people in the startups when I've worked with MVCs, and they all talk about, oh, Amazon is a model. The thing is, you can't do a second Amazon like that. So don't give that as an example. It's hilarious how people in startups don't understand that stuff. But the point is, learn how to find, locate, research, recognize, and study greatness, whether it's in a small startup or in a billion-dollar brand. Learn, be hungry, be curious. That's what I've done.
Thank you, Paul. I think you're going to you're going to present some stuff. So I am done with all my questions. I think you're going to present, and then we can open it up to everyone else. So over to you, Paul.
Oh, all right. I think I will go through the 7 basic stories because it's another thing that irritates me no end, how people just do a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not right. I'm a storyteller. Because what do I say? And see if you guys know this. Not everything is a story. Not everything should be a story, and not everything is a story worth hearing. But we'll talk about the 7 basic stories. And for people watching the video, I'll give them something to follow. So here, let me go to here, go to share a screen, and click on this screen here. Here we are. There are 7 basic human stories. I did not collect them. I did not name them. In fact, I really, in case anyone knows, my wonderful, wonderful colleague and connected in my favorite agency, Rob Schwartz. I got these originally from a speech he gave because he collected them from unknown sources. I just keep spreading the wisdom. There are 7 basic human stories. Some have argued there's fewer, but I think these 7 are really the thing. They are overcoming the monster, a quest, journey and return, rags to riches, rebirth and renewal, comedy and tragedy. So what do these mean? I'll go through each one briefly so I understand the essence of each one, and I'll give an example of at least one brand or industry that toils in this space daily. Now, here's a quick insight because a lot of you have heard me talk about this before, and you should remember this. If you're thinking, oh, well, I want a formula, and so if I am this, I will do that. No, it's not a formula. I'm sorry you want a formula, but life is not a formula. If you think life is a formula, I wish you good luck, but stay away from it. Overcoming the monster exists when you have a brand or a business model or a business where there is an accepted, overwhelmingly large, overly dominant, somewhat negative force in that industry. To Samsung, Apple is the monster because they occupy the mind space of so many people. So Samsung says, hey, those of you who just kind of don't like Apple for whatever reason, here's an alternative for you. And we have features they don't. Look, we have a feature they don't, and they attract people who go for that. Overcoming the monster, you will get a certain amount of fans if you identify the monster, and you'll have people who will say, yay, I agree, that's a monster. Go get them. And they may buy your product or they may like your posts. A quest, as those of you who missed a few minutes ago when I was talking about the greatest brand in the history of the world so far, Nike is a quest. It is a particular kind of a journey that does not have a destination. Curing cancer, unfortunately, is probably a quest. We may never eradicate it, but if someone comes to your front door collecting, for a cure for cancer, yeah, because you hate that. It is overcoming a monster too. But see, a quest is a journey that people acknowledge does not have a destination. Becoming fit. Wealth itself, for most people, is a quest. How many rich people say, yep, I made all the money I want, I'm done? It would be refreshing if I heard that, but the point is it's essentially a quest. And if your business or brand is a journey towards something where you never arrive, a quality of a journey, you could embrace a quest. Journey and return. I like to give the example of the little humble hobbit Bilbo Baggins, who was a nobody, who went on a dangerous journey, almost died a few times, met interesting friends, and came back a different hobbit. Subtle, but different. In branding, you could use Disney as a perfect example. If you are the breadwinner or the provider for your family and you have kids who want to go to Disney, if you take them to Disney, when they come home, they're different. They've been changed. They want to go back every year. And you're different. You now have to figure out how to come up with 15 to 30 grand every year to take whatever size family you have back at least once or twice a year. Things change. Airbnb, when you stay in a city and you live in a house in a city, as I did for an Airbnb in Amsterdam a month and a half ago, it changes you when you live in a city. So your business may be a people work with us, they experience our product, and they return to their ordinary life a different person. Rags to riches is the slipperiest one of all. It is a fundamental human story. I used to be a nobody. Now, Ma, look at me. I'm a success. We all know that story. Anyone who's a fan of the band Queen, if you watch the movie Bohemian Rhapsody and you know the story of the band, you know that meeting when you know they're about to go big and your heart swells. Or if you watch a movie more than once, like Moana, one of my favorite movies, you know, when the little girl is growing and you know she's finding her purpose, your heart swells and it's a beautiful feeling, rags to riches. But the trick is almost never should your business or brand say, hey, we used to be nothing, now look at us, because then you're an a-hole. The one example I will give is that image that went around in social media from Netflix, where they said something like on a movie marquee, something to the effect of, hey, never give up on your dreams. Remember, we used to mail out DVDs. That's a nice self-deprecating rags to riches message with a wink that's excusable and actually quite nice. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but almost never. Rebirth and renewal. This is the deep human touch of the rejection of mortality. The idea that something can appear to die and come back with a new life. In my lifetime, the American auto industry has been declared dying or dead by forecasters at least 4 times. And when it comes back with a renewal and a rebirth and a vigor of life, it comforts us as human beings knowing that we can be resilient and face any odds, even apparent death. If your business or brand wants to embrace the story of rebirth renewal, it almost requires you to die, to go out of business, to do a life changing pivot. A little nod to you, Kate, where you change a name, you do a new energy towards something, but you have to have that trail. I knew you then, and now you're doing something new and different when you appear to have died or gone underground. It takes real nuance to really pull the human aspect of rebirth and renewal, which leads to two very simple ones, actually, comedy and tragedy. Comedy, on one hand, any business or brand could, not should, but could embrace comedy for the brand because right now we need to laugh more than ever before. In the pandemic, out of the pandemic, changing and the unknown of the world, we need laughter every day. So anyone who can supply much needed laughter, which is why the agency Mischief, I love them to death, it's necessary. But is it true to your brand? One of the examples I give, if you follow some of the sort of hit brands on Twitter, they're all trying to be the same smart aleck wiseacre thing, whether it's uh, Slim Jim or Bud Light or whatever beer. They're all talking the same way, like a college kid is being smartass on Twitter. Well, your fans may like that, but it's not really differentiating. You're all kind of in that same category, which can be troublesome. If you use comedy, make sure the comedy comes from the truth of your business or brand. If you know as many comedians as I know, you know there's so many ways to do comedy, from dark comedy to black comedy, and that does not mean racial comedy, to intelligent comedy, to stupid comedy, to whatever, childish comedy. You find the comedy that is true to your brand, you can do that. I was telling your story. And last is tragedy. There's two examples of tragedy that you may or may not be aware of. One is life insurance. The salesman knocks on a door, comes into the home, sees the beautiful family, tells the person they're trying to sell to and says, you've got a wonderful family. Gee, what if something happened? How long is your commute? Accident fatality statistics, or your diet, and what does actuarial tables say about how long you can live? Do you know your family will be taken care of if something happened to you? How much do I need to buy? It's that guilt, and it's plucking the strings of mortality. People don't like the strings of mortality being plucked, but if you do it the right way, you can probably sell them something. That's one. The second one is surprising. Not all, but some automobile tires historically have used tragedy. You see the woman driving at night. It's night, and you can see she's got a tense expression. In the back seat are two kids trying to go to sleep. Lightning flashes. It's a wet mountain, slick road. Oh my gosh, you zoom in on the tires. Brand new, sharply chiseled tread, dispensing and diverting all that water because those tires are saying, we won't let the kids die. Buy our brand, using tragedy. So, in summation, you should understand what the human quality of all these story models are. But what I'm suggesting, if you're going to do branding on your own, good luck. The easy way is to say, well, I'm a rebirth and renewal brand, so I'm going to talk like rebirth and renewal. Well, the trick is knowing what's true about you and your business is one thing, but finding if you're going to use storytelling, if you're going to for your branding, you might apply comedy to a story in a way that no one's done before, or tragedy to a story model that no one's ever done before, or turn something into a quest that no one's ever done with comedy before. For instance, are we ever going to laugh enough? Food is a quest. I don't care what you think. Anytime you eat a meal, you might think, oh, I'm full until the next day. So you can use these models in a way that not only communicate your personal story as a business or brand, but also can inform the way you do branding. So there's that.
Dan, that was amazing. Paul, where can they find you for people that's listening as live? What is your website?
It is the THE, easy word, and then comes some numbers. 1101, and there's a reason for those numbers. Then comes the word experiment, EXPERIMENT, and then a dot, and then ORG. And if you're like me, you like to say orgy.
All right, Dan, do you have a word for that? So thank you, Paul. We are doing our Q&A.
Bring them.
Yep. All right. So yeah, we're gonna kick it off. So love to hear if you had. Look at that. We got Bolly Paul flashing right. So if you would like to ask Paul a question, you can flash your mic, and then I will just go in order here. It looks like Bolly Paul is going to be first. So Bolly Paul, why don't you kick it off with your question?